Well, I am sitting in the office of the lawyer, Chad Williamson. We had another lawyer on the file too, Scott Nickel was his name. And literally minutes ago, we ended the 4-hour legal battle in the Federal Court of Canada. As you may know, we are suing David Lametti, the former and disgraced Justice Minister under Justin Trudeau, the one who invoked the Emergencies Act illegally, unconstitutionally, and shortly after it was ruled to be unconstitutional and illegal, he quit Parliament in a huff and he decamped for a private law firm. But on his way out the door, he tried to delete his Twitter account. But when he's the government minister and he's got that little gray check mark, that is not his account. That is the government's account, the public account, the government account. And that is actually against various laws, including laws touching on the library and archives of this Canada. Well, we went to court right away. We hired Chad and Scott, and they worked all weekend, and we had an emergency application to get a judge to put it back up. Lametti bent the knee, and he put it back up and said, "Oh, you caught me. You caught me with the hand in the cookie jar, but, I put it back up. Can I please slink away now?" And we said no, and today is actually the third hearing in 2 weeks. And here to talk about it is one of the two lawyers representing Rebel News. So, Chad, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, Ezra. It's been a grueling 2 weeks and a pretty crazy day in court today, hearing a cauldron of peculiarities, I think I called it on the record, coming from Respondents' Counsel. I think there's 4 government lawyers there arguing that Lametti, he's a private citizen, that it's not a government account, and that the Attorney General has no control over the people that control the account, and that reactivating his Twitter account, that's not an admission that he did anything wrong, of course. And then also saying, we don't want to consent to an order from the court that we not destroy any government records. We'll just give you a little undertaking, a little promise to do that. And it was a long day. We appeared before the Chief Justice Crampton himself, who's a noted and esteemed justice, has been in his position for at least a decade. Very smart guy. Long, excruciating submissions today. Scott made most of them for us, and I thought that they were very, very precise, concise, but they're also lengthy because there's so many different issues. We got the Access to Information Act, Ezra. We got the Library and Archives Canada Act. We've got charter submissions concerning Rebels' freedom of the press and freedom of expression as well. And it's so difficult to touch on all that stuff when you only have about an hour to do so. So Scott did a great job. I kind of jumped in where I could. Then the respondents got to go, and it was just it was bizarre. It was quite bizarre.
Here's the two things that struck me the most. We've had a couple of hearings on this matter already before a different judge, and they were about an hour. They were less than an hour. So surprise number one, it's the chief judge himself, the big boss, the absolute big boss himself, which I thought about, and I thought that makes sense because if you're suing the justice minister, if you're alleging that the former attorney general, lawyer, law professor, and the top lawyer in the country broke the law, you need a very senior judge with a lot of gravity to make that. You don't want a judge who's just appointed. And if you're going to weigh for or against him, you need a serious, sober-minded judge, a smart judge, also a judge who can weigh how's this going to look in terms of the rule of law. Do we let a judge, a former justice minister, off the hook because he's politically connected? Or are we actually going to rule against him? If you take on a justice minister, you better have a weighty guy to do it. So I thought, there's a lot of politics in this case, and they put the big boss on it. I don't know exactly what to make of it, other than they realize this is a big case.
I wasn't expecting that, to be honest with you.
Oh, no, me neither.
We see in a litany of previous litigation going back 4 years that have had to do with civil rights. We've seen relatively, maybe not junior, but relatively unknown judges presiding over fairly wide-reaching and monumental cases. So again, I was shocked. It's starting to make a little bit more sense upon further reflection. That's why I think these debriefs are so important.
I think the second thing that struck me, and we've already alluded to it, is the first two hearings were less than an hour. This was supposed to be about an hour. In fact, when some of the lawyers, about half an hour, Your Honor, will only be about half an hour. Well, it turned into 4 hours, and it was a little long. I mean, I got ants in my pants, so I can't sit for 4 hours. But the judge did, and he asked a lot of questions. So you got a combination of the most senior judge in the entire federal court, literally the Chief Justice of the federal court, plus 4 hours. This is going to be a rigorous decision. And I thought it was going pretty well for us. In the end, though, it almost felt like he was going to let Lametti get away with, like you say, a pinky swear. I swear I won't do anything again, which is much different than a court order. A court order comes with a certain, not just a majesty, but if you mess around with a court order, you could be in contempt of court. Whereas an undertaking, a pinky swear, doesn't really cut a lot of ice, given that this same justice finished the one who broke the law by trying to delete his account.
I think what's important to remember when we look at this case is this all started because Lametti, or somebody acting on his behalf, deleted his Twitter account or deactivated it. There's evidence before the court that if it's deactivated for 30 days, they start trashing the data and it's gone. We call it the pipeline of destruction. You made a great comment online that if this was a drinking game where if every time Scott said the pipeline of destruction, well, we'd all be having a lot of fun towards the end of that, because of how much we're trying to impress upon the court that David Lametti basically put his Twitter account in the bin, and the garbage man was on the way to come and pick up the trash.
And they argued, oh, well, don't you worry. You don't need a court order now because it's against the law to delete it. Well, yeah, that's the whole point. That's the whole reason we're here, is because David Lametti already broke the law. And you're saying, oh, you don't, fine, you caught us. We just pinky swear we won't do it again. But then later on, one of his lawyers, who I'll use his pronouns, Mr. Grossman, he, him, he argued, well, once we've preserved the records of the Library and Archives Canada, Mr. Lametti can delete it all he likes because he's a private person. He's not bound by the government anymore. So he basically said, we are going to delete it. Now, he later sort of backed away from that, but I couldn't believe they said some things that I found astonishing. They said he's not a government actor, so he's not bound by government laws. And Scott Nickel, your colleague, said, well, does that mean someone can be a private person, come into public life, do a lot of public decisions, and then just snap his fingers and quit and say, I'm a private person, you can't come at me anymore, I can do what I like. There were a lot of points I saw the judge really engrossed with, but I don't know how it's going to go, and you don't want to read too much in a judge's expression or even his questions, but it really is on a knife's edge, I feel.
Yeah, and I do too. I always try to get the pulse of the justice as we're going through the case. And at the start, I really thought that we swung the needle in our favor. I thought it was going quite well, as is often the case when we're against a bunch of government lawyers, especially when we think that we've got a really strong case. I usually find that their submissions also help tip the scales in our favor, because usually they're rambling, they're contradictory. They try to kind of reframe our argument for us in a way that is maybe sometimes disingenuous. So I really felt that it was swinging our way. But just towards the end, I just started getting the feeling that, hey, wait a second. I think that the justice realizes, obviously, that this is a very, very important decision. There is a ton of materials that have been put before the court. He's going to have to go and review them, because we've got this network and matrix of kind of conflicting acts of Parliament that also have some obligations that are kind of intertwined. We've got charter submissions. We've got obviously a whole bunch of evidence that, there probably is going to be destruction if he goes and does it again. But I heard arguments in there, and again, it's like you're on the battlefield, right? You don't know if that bullet whizzed wide at 1 o'clock or at 3 o'clock, or maybe if it was friendly fire. But I could have sworn I heard Respondents' Counsel for Lametti say, well, there's no obligation for him to keep his Twitter account now that he's a private citizen. So in one breath, he's kind of saying, well, he shouldn't have to keep his Twitter account. He's not, he's a private citizen now. There shouldn't be any court order requiring him to keep his Twitter account. But then by the end of the day, he's saying, well, hey, we'll totally keep his Twitter account up by way of undertaking. So it was back and forth all day. it was really hard to kind of wake up from all this and go, well, what the heck happened in that 4.5 hours? But I saw there's so much contradictory arguments coming from the respondents. People saying, oh, he's not a government guy, and oh, the government has no control over these Twitter accounts. Very, 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 very strange day. Whereas I think that the arguments from Scott and the arguments from Rebel and from yourself as an applicant, I actually thought that they were very dialed, very consistent. And who knows, maybe that's going to be enough to win the day.
Well, we'll probably find out within a couple of days. He really sounded like he wanted to get it out quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if he releases it even this week, which is not normal. I mean, this is an emergency injunction. We're seeking the preservation of the Twitter accounts, lest he delete them again. I want to mention one more thing. We got the court to allow a public Zoom link. I mean, in Canada, courts are public, but the idea of having cameras in a court is a fairly novel one. The COVID-19 scare really forced that into happening. So what was exciting is that we emailed out our Rebel News viewers the link to log in. And throughout the hearing, like for 4 solid hours, there was between 400 and 500 people at any one time. You know, people were coming and going, but I would imagine cumulatively over the course of the 4 hours, a few thousand people watched, so, which is impressive to me because, I mean, there were some technical legal arguments, and lawyers are not the most scintillating people around. Judges, I don't know how they keep their attention span. I mean, I grayed out a few times there, I will admit, although I was tweeting the whole time. If people want to see, we've got that website, stopthecoverup.com, because that's really what it is. Why on earth would he delete his Twitter account? And our lawyers again and again said, we're not asking for anything. We're not asking for any money. Obviously, we're not asking for Lametti to actually positively do anything. It's not mandating him to do something. It's prohibiting from doing one thing. Don't delete it. Like, just don't delete it, okay? No. We don't want a court order saying don't delete it. We'll give you a pinky swear, and it has all sorts of wiggle room. It's so weird how hard they're fighting this.
One thing that I would say, and this is not necessarily to look at this, whole thing with a rosy hue and that, well, even if we don't get the injunction, well, we won anyway. But I really want to impress upon everybody that this started as a government minister and government MP leaving office and deleting his Twitter account. In the span of 2 weeks, we've gone from basically the destruction of what we consider to be government records to Twitter's back up online. And from my understanding, he's tweeting again. So he's using the account. Moreover, we've gotten them from going, well, he shouldn't have to use the government account whatsoever, to saying, hey, well, what can we promise to do that will satisfy the court that we're not going to delete the records? And that's from absolutely nothing. If Rebel did not bring this lawsuit, the 30 days would be gone. The information would be toast. So whether we get the injunction or not, we've moved the needle from deleted records to basically Lametti's lawyers going, well, what can we do to, try to make sure that, the court doesn't come down on us too hard for what we did, in the past. So I think there is a real victory here. If we get the injunction, that'll be real sweet. But I think we've already made headway. The Twitter account's back up. People can access it. And now we've got Lametti's lawyers basically saying, hey, well, we'll make promises to preserve these records.
I think what's most interesting is the private so-called direct messages. On Twitter, for those who don't know, you can have public tweets. You're basically like a town crier. Hear ye, here's what I got to say. You want to tell the whole world. But you can make private direct messages to other Twitter followers that the world doesn't see. So it's like having a contact book. It's like Facebook. You can send a private message to your friends on Facebook that the world doesn't see. And that's, I think, what he's afraid of, because we saw during the public order inquiry into the invocation of martial law that Lametti floated the idea of deploying tanks. Now, whether it was a joke, that's a joke, or not, I don't know, but we caught him saying it, and it wasn't in a formal means of communication. It was a text message. So what direct messages did he make on Twitter? Because Twitter is even better than a text message, because it's instantly contacting all of your followers. So a lot of pretty much everyone important in the country would follow David Lametti. Any cop, a lot of judges, any politician, and like so many people, of course, they want to, quote, follow the justice minister. So he doesn't even have to know your phone number. He doesn't have to know your email address. If you are a follower, he can send you a message. I am certain in my bones that he has direct messages that touch on his conduct as a minister. And what I'm afraid of, and what I think he's afraid of, which is why he's fighting so hard, is he doesn't want litigants or the world to see any more of these send in a tank moments, especially now that his martial law was declared illegal and people are going to start suing. And imagine if Lametti has some private statements like, oh, get them all, or I don't care, kill them all, let God sort them out. Or like, that's a ridiculous example. He wouldn't say that. But some extreme thing that he would say thinking no one would see it because he was just going to delete his Twitter account. And here we are saying, well, slow down a minute, mister.
My favorite aspect of litigation and being a lawyer is what's called the discovery process. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a little different in federal court. It's a little different in this case. But one thing that I've seen in acting against the government in cases for over 4 years is every time we start seeing the evidence, and I'm a lawyer, I always say, show me the evidence. And I'm pretty much unwilling to make any definitive statements until I see the evidence. Most of the time when we get the evidence, there's stuff in there, correspondence, buddy, internal, messages that are pretty gross, that should probably
locker talk.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, don't think the cabinet ministers don't have locker talk. I mean, it's stressful being a cabinet minister. You want to blow off steam. It's tribal. You want to beat your chest a bit. You're frustrated. You're dealing with I'm not saying I blame them, but I'm saying if you are the cabinet minister, if you're the justice minister, and you're making decisions and you're using public resources and like a Twitter account, which is owned by the government, it's not your own. It would be like someone sending emails from work. You send an email from work, it actually belongs to your workplace. It's not private.
We saw an email from Alberta Health Services during the Chris Scott stuff that they didn't want to provide. We didn't uncover this until cross-examination at trial. Mm-hmm. And the email said, don't let them know that this is political. When they were trying to obviously shut down these events for what they purported to be public health stuff. And then we got the email saying, hey, we'll just try not to, let the air off that this is political. And I'm paraphrasing the email. But I want to see the emails. I want to see the DMs.
Yeah. You know what? I fear that he's already deleted them. I think anyone who would take over from Jody Wilson-Raybould. I mean, she was a left-wing liberal. There's no doubt about it. But she was ethical enough that when Justin Trudeau said, hey, can you let some of my buddies with SNC Lavalin out of this criminal prosecution? Can you just let them cut a deal? She said, yeah, no, that's not how justice works. And so he fired her. He fired her over that. And he, therefore, obviously looked for the most unethical, ethically malleable Gumby that he could twist, that he could find. And he found David Lametti. David Lametti was hired specifically because he would do whatever Trudeau said. And we saw that when he brought in the Emergencies Act, which the federal court said was illegal, unconstitutional. So he is a lawbreaker, a serial lawbreaker. He broke the law in the Emergencies Act. He broke the law by wrongly trying to delete his account. And I'm worried this judge is going to let him off with just a slap on the wrist. So just give us a pinky swear, Mr. Lametti. And you're a former justice minister, and we're all friends here, and we're all part of the same circle. So a pinky swear is good enough. I'm worried about that. Listen, I'm not criticizing the judge. I think the judge paid excellent attention, asked good questions. I'm just worried the judge is going to rule he's going to give the benefit of the doubt to Lametti.
I suppose we're going to see what happens. We've seen these cases go both ways. One of the lessons that I learned as a young lawyer is you can go into that courtroom 100% wrong and come out right. Mm-hmm. You can go into that room 100% right and still come out wrong. So I guess only time will tell, and we'll see how the judge weighs what's been put before it today.
Yeah. Well, Chad is one of our winningest lawyers, that's for sure. He was the lawyer the Rebel News hired in 2021 when Trudeau's hand-picked election debates commission tried to kick us out, and we won. And we got an injunction requiring them to accredit us. And, of course, a few small, fun wins when Stephen Guilbeault and three other cabinet ministers, Yara Sachs, Karina Gould, and Marcia Ian, blocked Rebel News journalists. We went to court and got them smacked down with a consent order. So we are holding the Liberals to task. Some are bigger than others. Some of those wins are more important than others. But they all have one thing in common. We're alone in the court. Well, I mean, there were 500 people watching the whole time. But when I say we're alone, I mean, does no one else care about a justice minister illegally deleting records? Does no one else care about a government debates commission keeping out enemies of the prime minister? Does no one else care about cabinet ministers censoring constituents they don't like? I'm sure people do care, but I don't see them in court with us. And it's a strange thing for a news company whose motto is telling the other side of the story to spend so much time, energy, and frankly, money holding the government to account. Is that our job? Well, fact is, it's fallen to us. That's why I want to invite you to go to our website, stopthecoverup.com. I want you to see what we've got written there, and I want you to consider chipping in. Scott and Chad were brawling for 4 hours, and obviously they prepared for many more hours in advance, and they don't work for free. I think they're reasonably priced, frankly, but we have a lot of
very reasonably priced.
It's true, and I won't say what your fee is. It's quite modest, but it does add up when you work 200 hours, 300 hours on a file. I'm not sure what the exact number is on this. It adds up, and over the next week, you will see us take on very interesting litigation. And it costs money. And part of me wishes there were others in the field of play, that others were fighting for freedom of the press. I don't see a lot of people fighting for freedom of the press now. And if it falls to us, well, then so be it, because we've got a secret weapon that David Lametti doesn't have. And that secret weapon is you.